Good morning. As many of you know, I have suffered from a few concussions during my time at Brooks, with my most recent one coming this past fall. But my history with brain injuries starts back in 6th grade when I got my first concussion in the lift line at Wachusett Ski Area. Back then, I didn't know the possible effects of concussions and the effect they would have on my life. I didn't notice the effects of them until I got my fourth concussion in the fall of my sophomore year at Brooks. I was playing club lacrosse and I got hit from behind. I fell flat on my face. It didn't occur to me that something was wrong until later in another game, I was having trouble seeing and throwing passes to nobody. After returning to school that night, at 10 o'clock check-in, I walked into the common room and stared at a wall for about 5 minutes. It was only after this that Miss McDowell asked me if I was feeling okay, to which I responded, "Is it bad if it took me 2 hours to read 5 pages?" She immediately decided that I need to go to the health center to be evaluated for a concussion. Once there, it was determined that I did in fact have a concussion. As I walked from the examination room to the room I would be staying in, I actually walked into a wall that I didn't see. It was then that I realized I was in rough shape and would need some time to recover. The next day, I remember lying in a health center bed trying to sleep when I heard this massive uproar from the chapel. Mr. Packard had just announced the first Heads holiday of the year, and I was stuck helpless in the health center. The nurses suggested that I go home to get some rest and hopefully be back by the end of the week for classes, but we were all wrong. I would need much more than a few days to recover. I was able to do school until Thanksgiving break, but it was tough. I often found myself dizzy and confused about what was going on. Classes were difficult as I struggled to read, write, and comprehend ideas. Upon returning from Thanksgiving break, my symptoms had only worsened, and a decision was made to send me home after only a week of classes. That was when the effects became apparent. I was angry, more impatient, and overall unhappy. By late February, I had still not been cleared and was doing much worse. I was constantly nervous and scared in social situations. I began skipping meals out of fear of social interaction. I remember in modern world history, I had to stand and read aloud a statement that I wrote, and I began to visibly shake out of fear as I read. I was so nervous and terrified about what people were going to think of me that I secluded myself in my room and was found nowhere else. When I would walk down Main Street, I would be scared to see someone else walking towards me because I wouldn't know what to say to them or just to say nothing. This continued on until one day toward the end of March break, I broke down. I was sick of being scared to do normal things. I wanted an out, and I wanted to have control. On March 26, 2016, I made the two biggest choices of my life. I left my house after everyone was asleep and walked to the top of my street where it intersected with a busier road. The thought that life would be easier if I wasn't living it was the only thing running through my mind. I was one step away from walking into oncoming traffic when I froze. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Grayson, my closest friend. I don't remember what the text said, but it saved my life. I quickly ran home. I realized I didn't want my life to end right there, right then, because I had too much to live for. The next day, I told my mom what was going on, but I omitted the late night walk I had taken the night before. We decided that I would see a doctor with hopes of figuring out what was going on. I was soon diagnosed with social anxiety disorder and depression from my social anxiety. I was also cleared from my concussion, but it was clear that it had already done enough to me to have lasting effects forever. I was put on medication and seeing a therapist twice a week. Things were getting better by the day. I was able to play lacrosse and once again take a part in the Brooks community. Things were looking up for once, and I was happy for the first time in months. Fast forward to this past fall, and things once again were not looking good. I was stressed out more than ever trying to juggle schoolwork and college applications. I had gotten another concussion and was once again behind on classwork. I was stressed and starting to feel overwhelmed. On November 28th at 9:12 p.m., I sat down at my desk to do pre-calc homework, and that was when it hit me. Tears, headache, blurred vision, and the fear of the world. My hands shook as I reached for my cell phone in an attempt to call home for help. I dropped my phone not once, but 4 times. All I wanted to do was hear my parents' voices, and even that was a struggle for me. The breakthrough moment of hearing my dad's voice put me at ease. It was a simple but common, "Hey sport, what's up?" "I can't do this." "Do what?" "School, math homework." "Can't do what?" he blurted out. I think he feared I was going to say life. All of this, school, talking to people every day, going to classes, even sleeping is hard. I just want to be in darkness, away from everyone else, be able to control what gets light and what doesn't. I wish I had never gotten those concussions because they destroyed the Cole that everyone loved and left me in pieces. Well, it sounds like you need a break. Head to the health center and I'll call them and let them know you're coming in. Thanks. I grabbed what I could and went to the health center. A lonely walk only accompanied by the rain and the wind. I was vulnerable and needed help, but for the time being, that walk saved my life from completely falling into shambles. My phone buzzed, and I dug through layers of clothes to find it, but when I did, I saw it was once again Grayson. He had sent me a text reminding me that in a few weeks we'd be back in Colorado, doing what we do best, raising hell. That text brought me a smile in a dark moment. It gave me something to look forward to in a time when taking a step was a challenge. His text was what I needed, and it changed my life. I suddenly walked with a little more eagerness, some dignity, and most importantly, a slight smile on my face. That night was the start to my journey of self-care and healing. I needed some time to focus on myself and figure out what was going on. Brooks placed me on medical leave, and this allowed me to really help myself heal. I began seeing a therapist and was soon diagnosed with major depressive disorder in addition to social anxiety. This diagnosis brought much clarity to my situation and allowed me to get the help I needed. I spent the winter seeing different doctors and therapists in hopes of being able to come back to Brooks. It worked, and on February 9th, I returned to school, better. I had support structures in place to help me in case things got tough, which they did. Since I've been back, I haven't gone to struggle or a fear of having a relapse, but I can happily say I'm doing it better than ever before. The biggest thing I've taken away from my struggle with mental health is that the people closest to you will make the biggest difference. My mom, who is here today, has been my biggest supporter and has always been there for me through good or bad. My dad, who can always somehow calm me down in my most tense moments. Miss Warner and Miss Brennan, for always finding a time to talk to me when I'd be most down. And Miss Rooney, for putting up with my constant shenanigans and the entire support team that helped me transition back to Brooks. Thank you.